Hey everyone, today I'm talking about INFJs and INFPs, narcissists, and enmeshment. Narcissism is talked about so much today. I follow a lot of newsletters for empaths and intuitive people, highly sensitive people. I follow a lot of YouTube channels. I see so much come through about narcissists. It's a really hot topic for sensitive, intuitive people, which I get. It's a big issue that we struggle with. What I don't see talked about so much is enmeshment. And in my view, enmeshment is just as important an issue for sensitive, intuitive people as narcissism itself is. It's just not talked about so much today. The two tend to be linked. Many INFJ personality types and INFP personality types grow up in homes with narcissistic family dynamics and or enmeshment. So a lot of INFJ personality types and INFP personality types I talk to, especially back in the days when I was doing one-on-one coaching, I would always ask them about narcissistic family dynamics. Now, some would say, I never had that. My parents were very loving. I wasn't abused in any way. There was no manipulation going on in our house. It was a great family. You know, I was really, really close with my mom or my dad. But other than that, you know, everything seemed to be pretty much normal, right? And then when I ask about that, what does really, really close mean? And we started digging deeper into it, much of the time issues of enmeshment would come out. And almost all of the time, the person had never heard the term enmeshment. They had no idea like what it meant. They weren't familiar with the different aspects when I talked about what enmeshment is. So with enmeshment, when you have a parent-child relationship, and you can also have this really with anybody, it doesn't have to be parent-child, but it shows up very often in parent-child relationships for INFJ personality types and INFP personality types. It means that there are really no boundaries. The boundaries are very blurred. The boundaries might always be changing, very unpredictable. They shift around a lot. There's not a lot of communication around boundaries. The boundaries tend to be very porous. The parent really is merging with the child a lot, merging with the child's energy field. So the parent might do things like walk into the child's room without knocking, or expect that the child share things with the parent, you know, like, well, we're so close, let's, you know, have the same daily journal that we write in, or I read your journal that you write in, and that's not a big deal. Or we share clothes, right? Or we share friends. Sometimes I've heard of mothers and daughters, like we share boyfriends, right? I've also heard of mothers and daughters, we share the same cell phone. So the child doesn't have any privacy around their text messages or their phone calls because, you know, mom's always checking it. I read a story online a couple years ago about a young girl who said she went away to college, she moved into the dorm, and 2 weeks later her mother moved into her dorm room with her. Mom said, I just miss you so much, I can't be away from you. It's easier this way. I'm going to live in your dorm room with you. I'm going to sleep in your twin bed with you. Now that's a really extreme example. However, it highlights what enmeshment is in a really great way, right? The boundaries are blurred. Privacy might be very low or non-existent. There is this expectation that we share things, and we share things that it might be inappropriate to share. And the boundaries are this way because we love each other so much, because we're so close. The parent will usually put a lot of focus on the bond they have with the child. Underneath this, with the boundaries being really blurred, there's also an expectation, and this is a narcissistic expectation, that the child will share the preferences and the opinions, right, the likes and the dislikes of the parent. So if the parent hates the color red, there's an expectation that the child will also hate the color red, right? Or if the parent doesn't want to eat at a certain restaurant in town, there's an expectation that the child will also have an aversion to that restaurant and not want to eat at that restaurant. These are really simple examples, but it can go on and on and on. And it can extend into to adulthood with the child, where the child is now an adult, and maybe the child has different political opinions than the parent, and the parent can't stand for that. The child who is now an adult is expected to have the same political preferences as the parent. They're expected to have the same religious preferences as the parent. They're expected to have the same cultural preferences as the parent. When the adult child does not, when they deviate from that, when the parent's a Republican and the adult child decides to become a Democrat, or the adult parent is a Christian and the adult parent is a Christian and the adult child says, no, that's not for me, I'm going to go my own way, right? Or the adult parent says, I don't believe that people should live together before they're married. And the adult child says, well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I want to live with my partner. I don't know if we'll ever get married. When those types of things happen, when there's enmeshment in play, it is almost unbearable for the parent to let the adult child go their own way. It's not only challenging, but it's a threat to their identity. It's a threat to their self-image, and it's a deep threat to the ego. So the parent may throw a temper tantrum, or aggressively punish the child, or passively aggressively punish the child. And I say child and adult child, but this really happens all the way through. If you have experienced enmeshment with a parent, this can happen when you're 5, this can happen when you're 15, this can happen when you're 45. It all depends on the situation you're in. So the game might slightly change, but it is still the same game. You are given the message that you're not allowed to have boundaries. You're not allowed to have your own preferences, your own opinions, your own will, your own life. And if you try to have those things, if you try to establish boundaries, you try to go your own way, and you try to individuate, you will be swiftly punished, usually via a withdrawal of love. So the parent's mad at you, the parent's not speaking to you, the parent's going to punish you in some way and let you know it's not okay that you are trying to be your own person. This is, like I said, happening because the parent is always trying to merge with the child's energy. Again, whether we're 5 or we're 45, the parent is always trying to merge with our energy. And so when you're in this pattern, if you've been locked in this pattern with a parent for a long time, it doesn't feel like anything is wrong. This is all you've ever known. This feels really familiar. However, when you finally start to break out of it, when you interrupt the pattern and you start to grow away from it, then when you go back into situations with the parent and they try to do that energy merging thing, it's going to feel really invasive. It's going to feel smothering. It's going to feel like they're trying to do something. They're trying to sort of like pin you down, make you do things. It feels coercive. It feels energetically coercive. And it can be a really icky feeling. So what happens for INFJ personality types and INFP personality types who've grown up with enmeshment, it's very hard for us to feel our own center because we were not allowed to develop that ability as children. We were never given the space to practice feeling our own center, realizing our own identity, discovering who we are and what we like and we prefer. We weren't given those opportunities. In fact, we were actively blocked from doing that. So it's very hard for us to feel our own center. We might be very unsure of our own self, and we definitely kind of get confused a lot of the time about what belongs to us and what belongs to others. This might manifest in the physical world, like say you're sitting and having lunch with someone and they start eating off your plate and you don't think that's inappropriate and you don't think that's a boundary violation, right? Even though you don't know the person very well. So that is something that people who have a history of enmeshment might struggle with, right? Like, where is the boundary there? Or somebody comes up to your desk at work and just takes something without asking and walks off with it, right? Again, somebody who has a narcissistic parent or a history of enmeshment, that might not seem weird. That might not seem like a boundary violation. Whereas to somebody who has healthy patterns in place, they would say that felt invasive. That felt like they were violating a boundary there. They stepped over a line. They came and took my thing, or they started eating the carrots off my plate. That's not okay. For INFJ and INFP personality types, because we've been raised in situations where that happened all the time, it doesn't really feel weird to us. And so we do have confusion about what belongs to us, what belongs to others. oh, the carrots on my plate, well, they're not really my carrots. Maybe they're for everyone. Or the stapler on my desk isn't really my stapler. I mean, it belongs to the company, so I guess anybody can take it without asking. That's sort of what goes through our mind. This also extends energetically, where we're not sure of what is ours emotionally and what is someone else's emotionally. What is ours to take responsibility for and what is someone else's to take responsibility for. So you can see the after effects, the long-term effects of enmeshment can spread very, very far. And it doesn't matter how old we are. We can really get caught up in these patterns and locked into these patterns, and they still cause damage to our lives. Enmeshment is toxic. That's really the bottom line. It's a toxic energy. It's not helpful to either party, and it causes long-term effects. So the solution, what do you do with this? Well, obviously, you want to work with boundaries around you and the other person who's doing the enmeshment thing with you, whether that's mom or dad or an uncle or an aunt or a brother or sister, whoever it is. You want to do some boundary work there. But you also want to work with centering yourself, finding your center, discovering your center, coming back to your center. What does that mean? Asking yourself, what brings me back to myself? Is it creativity? Is it writing? Is it art? Is it music? Is it sitting in silence? Is it meditation? Is it alone time, right? Is it talking with a good friend who I feel does respect my boundaries and does see me? What brings me back to myself, right? What brings me back to center? The next question to ask is what brings out the most you in you? What brings out your essence the most fully? And this might be some of the same answers as the previous question, right? Art, creativity, music, working with people, working with animals, being out in nature, listening to a good friend, talking to a good friend. That might bring out the most you in you. When you can really home in on that, this brings out the most me in me. You are that much closer to finding your true center. I'm going to be teaching about this and so much more. And I know I say that for every class, but I really do pack a lot into every class and workshop. I'm going to be teaching about this and so much more in my new workshop happening Wednesday, May 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's 4 to 5:30 p.m. Eastern. It's called Narcissists and Boundaries. This is an INFJ, INFP-centric workshop. However, any intuitive type is welcome to join. You don't have to be an introvert. You don't have to be a feeler to get a lot of benefit out of this workshop. This workshop is for people who are dealing actively right now, currently, with narcissists in their life. Also people who in the past have attracted narcissistic relationship patterns. So maybe there's not an active narcissist in your life, but you're scared that they're going to show up again. Maybe you've had like a long string of failed relationships or romantic partners who all turned out to be narcissists. And right now you're single and you'd like to be partnered again, but you don't want to get into another bad relationship. This workshop's also going to be a good fit for you. It's also a great fit for people who are deeply interested in boundary work, even, again, if they're not actively dealing with narcissists, but you're just saying, boundaries are a really important part of my life. I'd like to learn more about them outside of the mainstream advice that's given to everyone. It just doesn't work for sensitive, intuitive people because we have a different makeup. Honestly, we have a different nervous system at the core, and that's why a lot of the mainstream boundary work advice doesn't work for us. So if you're interested in that aspect of things, this workshop's also going to be a really great fit. If you have questions about any of it, please email me your questions, lauren@laurensapala.com. Registration for this workshop ends on Tuesday, May 28th, so get me your questions before then. Thanks so much, everyone. I'll see you next time.